Do you want to wake up feeling like you're stepping into who you're meant to be, into the best possible version of you? What if I told you that the key to your best life, health, and happiness are all around you? You just have to find what works for you. I'm Hope Pedraza, and I believe that there isn't just one way to live a healthy and meaningful life, and that all you need is a little inspiration to make changes that last from the inside out. Each week, I'll be sharing tangible tips and inspirational interviews to help you on your journey. These are the steps to take to improve your life and live with purpose. This is Hopeful and Wholesome. Hey y'all, welcome back to the show. Today, I am talking all about heavy metals. I wanted to do an episode about heavy metals. I talk a lot about minerals and about mineral balancing. And I've mentioned heavy metals before, just in terms of measuring heavy metals in the body and kind of about toxicity. But I think it's important to really understand what heavy metals are. And I think this is one of those pieces, along with mineral balancing, that sometimes, or not sometimes, I'd say oftentimes overlooked with other practitioners that, well, especially in the traditional medical model, is not really something that, well, first of all, the doctors aren't trained in it, but it's just not something that they look at. It's just not on their radar. And unless it's like, extreme cases of, mercury poisoning or lead poisoning, but in terms of just overall toxicity, it's just not something the traditional medical model recognizes. And a lot of practitioners don't use tests like the HTMA or a heavy metal test. There's other ways to test for heavy metals. And so anyway, I feel like when we're talking about toxicity and we're talking about limiting exposure to toxins and limiting your toxic load and all of that this is something we have to talk about to understand what heavy metals are, because they're in the environment. They are common in the environment, and it's important to know how to recognize them and get rid of them. So let me just start with the basics. What are heavy metals? The term heavy metal is referring to any metallic chemical element that has a relatively high density and is toxic or poisonous at low concentrations. Sorry, that's like the textbook definition of what a heavy metal is. And so when we're talking about heavy metals, there are some super common ones that show up in the body. But it's like metallic elements that get stored in the body. And there are some, let me say this first. We're exposed to things like heavy metals, like day in, day out. Like it's impossible to not get exposed to these, that we breathe them in the environment. Your car exhaust has heavy metals in them. And, so we're going to be exposed to them. I would just want to preface this by saying we're talking about limiting your exposure to them. Okay. So let me talk about how heavy metals or heavy metal toxicity shows up in the body. And it's funny because just like a lot of different things we talk about on this show, the symptoms all mimic other issues. And so this is why I think a lot of times it just goes unchecked or unrecognized or unnoticed, because it mimics so many other things. It's just not something where most practitioners jump to looking at, like, oh, do you have copper toxicity? Or, so, it can show up as mental disorders and mental issues like ADD, ADHD, anxiety, depression, even things like schizophrenia and impulsive behavior and, brain fog. It can show up as just being jittery, insomnia, racing heart, nausea, poor digestion, sluggishness, just overall sluggishness. It can lead like to serious things. For a lot of these, it can lead to different cancers and inflammation in certain organs. And it can lead to mineral imbalances, because it kind of a lot of these feed off of kind of take from other minerals, right? And so it can cause some mineral imbalances, liver congestion, thyroid issue, digestive issues, respiratory issues, kidney dysfunction, liver dysfunction, chronic disease, is breaking, like overall oxidative stress on your cells. So that's your cells breaking down, basically damage to your cells. So when I say you really need a test to know if you have heavy metal toxicity, it's because all of these, there's very few of these where it's like there's a group of symptoms where you're like, oh yes, that is this specific metal toxicity, right? It just mimics other things. So let's talk about the most common ones and where they show up. All right. So let's see. I'm just going to kind of list a few that show up the most in my world. And there's a ton of other ones, but let's see. First, let's say uranium is a common one that shows up. Now, uranium shows up in areas where there's a lot of granite granite rock, right? So if you're drinking well water, if you're drinking tap water in an area where there's granite rock, your uranium's going to show up high. It's into if you grow vegetables, if your vegetables like root vegetables are growing in a place with high granite rock and you're not washing them good, different herbs can come up on different herbs, but it's from growing things in like places with high granite rock. Arsenic is one that's common. You probably have heard of arsenic before. It's a carcinogen, but it's found in it can be found in groundwater in some areas. It can be found in tobacco and rice products, in anti-caking agents, things they put in spices to keep it from sticking together. Arsenic can be found in that. Very carcinogenic. Mercury is super common. Mercury almost always shows up on my HTMA test that I do for my clients. This can be found in a lot of things. It can be found in fish. So if you're eating fish that's high mercury, that's especially like deep water fish. The deeper the water the fish live in, pretty much the higher the mercury is a good rule of thumb. So I highly recommend you limit your intake of mercury fish that's high mercury. And you can go Google a list of it. There's a list there. But typically, if you're looking at kind of like most white fish or freshwater fish is going to be lower in mercury. Now, vaccines are also high in mercury. And this is not saying you should or shouldn't get vaccinated. This isn't a conversation. I'm not going into that conversation here. But the fact is that vaccines do have mercury in them. But even if you do get vaccinated, though, there's plenty of ways you can detox your body after getting vaccinated. A big one for me, though, in my world, a big one is amalgam fillings. Your fillings are filled with mercury. And if you have a lot of dental issues and you have amalgams, you have got some mercury going on in your body. I have had clients who have gone to a biological dentist to get their amalgams removed. And it's like a switch flips off and they're like a whole new person. I'm not even kidding. And I've heard so many stories about this in my FDN world of this happening. So the amalgam fillings are really a huge source of mercury. And then there's a lot of cleaning solutions that are high in mercury. If you use like Lysol and Ajax and even, I hate to say it, but even some soaps like Dove soap, a lot of soaps have mercury in them. Let's see, another lead is one, which it's not as common now because most places have gotten rid of lead paint. But this is one that really stays in the body. And some say it can take up to 15 years to detox from lead. So make sure you're not using lead paint. Aluminum is another one with mercury. It shows up all the time. It almost always shows up. And a lot of times, like low levels are not a big deal, or it's going to show up. But getting higher levels is cause for problems because there are studies that show that high levels are linked to things like autism, Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, colitis, cavities. So it does lead to some neurodegenerative things that we want to avoid. And I have an episode coming out next month about autism and ADHD, but heavy metals is something that we mentioned in that episode. And this is an aluminum is one of those that you really want to pay attention to. This is an easy one to really avoid, like, for high levels of it. Again, it typically shows up at least low levels with my clients, but to avoid high levels, you don't cook with aluminum foil and change your deodorant unit perspirant, right? There's some easy ways to do it to avoid aluminum. See, tin can sometimes show up high on HTMA for my clients. Tin is almost as common as aluminum, as common as aluminum. And it's because we eat stuff out of cans. So canned foods, canned beverages, if you can avoid it, and I'm not saying, you have to nix all the canned stuff, but if you can especially avoid acidic foods in cans, like tomato-based stuff, that's a huge one. That acid in the tomato, it just leaches out the tin, right? So it's gonna affect things. And the primary storage for tin is in the liver and the kidneys, and so this really does affect really how your body's functioning. Your detox organs, it's affecting them directly. Let's see, titanium is another one that shows up. Titanium and strontium and zirconium. These three are ones that I see often. And while they sound a little obscure, and like titanium, it's like, well, okay, if I don't have a hip replacement or a joint replacement, like where's the titanium coming from? Well, it's coming from your cosmetics, y'all. Strontium, titanium, zirconium. There's a ton of other ones. It's coming from your cosmetics, from your deodorants, from your sunscreens. It's coming from even in like over-the-counter medications. Like they use titanium to whiten pills, like allergy pills and over-the-counter pain medicine and all that kind of stuff. So it does show up. And I've had clients who have come to me. We've run the HTMA, we've run the hair tissue analysis, and they have so many things that come up like super duper high, not even a little high, but like off the charts high. And I can guarantee you it's their personal care products and it's their makeup. And that's the first thing I tell them, like, you need to change your makeup like yesterday. Like we need to change things out. So those really do affect how your body's working, y'all. And a lot of these, like for example, zirconium, for example, it competes with potassium. And so it competes with the binding site on the cells. And so it's going to affect your potassium supply. Titanium is gonna affect your molybdenum supply, and so it's gonna cause oxidative stress. Like there's so many effects of these heavy metals, and so I think that the testing is important because you want to know exactly what you're looking at, because depending on which ones you're looking at, there's some different strategies for different ones, right? So we want to manage specific ones where there's different minerals and vitamins that can counterbalance those, right? So the test is important. Now, looking at testing, the HTMA that I run is a great test for these, and it measures a good like dozen or so heavy metals. There's a urine test you can do. The urine test, though, it's for more recent excretion of metals. And so it's not really, it's not going to be super accurate for people who are super depleted, because people who are super depleted, which I'll get to in a second, you're not going to be peeing out a lot of them. Like you're harboring them in your soft tissue. And so I don't love the urine sample. It's not super duper accurate, but it is one that you can do. There's a stool test that you can take that can measure them. And then there's a blood test. Again, the blood test is not super accurate. So I would never recommend taking a blood test. I really do like doing the HTMA for heavy metals. And even if it's not measured for every single heavy metal, it's measuring for the important ones, for the big ones. And it's enough to see if you are harboring heavy metals to know if you should be doing a heavy metal protocol. So let's talk about what that looks like. So there are times when you should not be doing a heavy metal protocol and getting rid of heavy metals. And that's the other thing too. I made a post, I don't know, maybe last week, about how sometimes going at it by yourself can be dangerous. And I mean, like your nutrition, your wellness journey can be dangerous. And I say that because, I've got people that come to me that have the best intentions and the best laid plans, and they're doing what seems to be all the right things, but they can really be making things worse. And I find that with heavy metals and mineral balancing, that's especially true. And if you are not ready, if your body's not ready to get rid of heavy metals, and you start doing like a heavy metal protocol because you read it somewhere or somebody told you should do it, it can really cause problems. So if you are what's called a 4 lows, which means that you have the big 4 minerals, calcium, potassium, magnesium, and sodium, those are low on the HTMA. You should not be doing a heavy metal protocol. Like we got to get those up and help your body. Your body's got to be able to handle dumping these heavy metals, right? If you're constipated, if you're not having at least 1 bowel movement a day, which in my book, that's still kind of constipated. We want multiple, but if you're not having at least 1 a day, you should not be doing a heavy metal detox. Like it's going to cause more problems. If you have gut infections, if you have parasites, gut infections, if you have leaky gut that hasn't been dealt with or managed, you want to deal with those things first before doing a heavy, because otherwise, y'all, it's just going to be pushed out into your bloodstream. Like it's going to cause so many more problems. If you're not feeling, your body's not feeling strong, if you've got a slow metabolic rate, meaning like the HTMA is something that measures that, like a slow oxidative rate means that you basically means your metabolism is slow. You're breaking things down slowly. So you're holding on to things. You're not being able to excrete things very quickly. If you have a slow metabolic rate, if you're a slow oxidizer, you should not be doing a heavy metal protocol. Your body is just going to harbor all of those, right? You also need to work on your detox pathway. So I've mentioned before, just detoxing in general, making sure your detox and drainage pathways are open. We've really got to work on detox and drainage pathways so that when you start to break up these heavy metals and it starts releasing from the tissues, they've got a place to go. Otherwise, we're just clogging up the liver even more, right? So all of these things and this is why it's so important to do a heavy metal detox. You have a heavy metal protocol with a trained practitioner, right? That knows what they're doing and can answer those questions for you so that it doesn't cause more problems. So in order to do heavy metal detox, right, we want to work on proper hydration. Hydration is with water. It's also with sodium, right, with electrolytes. We want to work on lymphatic drainage. We want to work on the liver. We want to make sure we've got the diet dialed in, that we're exercising and sweating regularly. And that's why if you have adrenal fatigue, if you're super depleted in your minerals, we don't want to do it, because sweating is going to help with the heavy metal detox. And if you're sweating and you're already depleted, y'all, it's like a recipe for disaster. And you're just going to wear yourself out even more. Supporting with things like, other mineral balancing, making sure we're balancing other minerals while we're doing the heavy metal detox. So we're not depleting ourselves at the same time, and we're supporting, because, and two, the other minerals are going to help balance things out. It's going to help us get rid of the excess toxin of the heavy metals. Supporting with things like lithium. Lithium is a great support. Glutathione, which is like our body's natural antioxidant. There are things to help support the detox process that are really important, so that you're supporting overall function at the same time. And that's the important thing here is, knowing that it's not just like, oh, I'm just going to take a bunch of things and push out. It's not that clear cut. We have to take the right actions before we start the detox. We have to take the right actions while we're doing the detox. And then there's a maintenance protocol too, right? We want to support your oxidative state. We want to retest. Retesting is important. And especially if you have a history of being a slow oxidizer, we want to make sure we're really maintaining that oxidative rate, that oxidative state, that we're keeping a good metabolism. We want to make sure that we're supporting with the right, and if you are, that's the thing I was going to say too. If you are historically a slow oxidizer, we want to make sure we're supporting things like potassium and sodium, vitamin K with MK7, right? The diet and the lifestyle, we want to support that. If you're a fast oxidizer, if there's somebody who breaks up things really fast, we want to make sure you're supporting calcium, magnesium, and the MK7. The MK7 is your vitamin K. That's going to be important no matter what, because that's going to help shuttle calcium where it's supposed to go. We want to make sure you're getting in regular sweat sessions as maintenance, right? Sauna therapy is great. I'm a huge fan of the sauna. I've got my sauna blanket that I use regularly. I love it. If I can't go to the sauna, one day I'd love to have a sauna in my house, but right now the sauna blanket is where it's at. And just getting regular sweat. Exercise, of course, is a great one too, but the sauna really gets into the tissues and really gets into the cells. Supporting yourself with multi-mineral formulas. Like, I love supporting with marine phytoplankton. It's a great way to get really good quality multi-minerals. And then sometimes you may need to continue the detox cycle. Like, sometimes we do, if somebody is like really harboring heavy metals, sometimes it can take time. And there are some experts that say it can take up to 3 years to clear metals. And then like lead, like I mentioned, can take up to 15 years. And I'm not saying it's going to take you 15 years to clear your heavy metals, but what I am saying is that there are some metals that can stay up into the body for that long. Like, it can take years. And so for somebody who is super depleted, or they have a history of being super depleted, they have a history of being a slow oxidizer, right? We run the labs, and that's the thing too. You want to keep running the labs to check on what the levels are doing. It could take a while, and maybe we get the body a break for a little while, then we come back to we kind of run another protocol, but it could take multiple protocols. But just knowing that it's going to require some patience and some grace, right? It's going to require some patience and grace with your body, and it's going to take time. Now, if you don't have if you're looking at how to do this on a budget, right? And you're not looking, maybe you can't do all the mineral protocols, and you're looking for kind of a more cost efficient way to do it. There are some things you can do. Of course, first and foremost, the testing is important regardless. We got to do the testing. We got to know, what we're getting rid of. Supporting first level minerals. So those are those really important minerals, the big ones that show up the most, but you want to support those first. A foot bath, a good detox bath. So things like Epsom salt and borax. And you can actually use that same formula, like for a few days before changing it out. Epsom salt and borax is a really great way to detox. You can even add some baking soda. Baking soda and Epsom salt is a great way to help detox the body. The borax is really supportive for that. If you're a slow oxidizer, right, just supporting yourself with good quality salt, right? Sea salt, Epsom salt. I already said that. Celtic salt. potassium broth, maybe getting a good, so just supporting, right, we're supporting those higher level minerals. So sea salt, potassium broth, a magnesium, potassium, boron foot bath. That's what the borax is. It's for the boron. In K7, you could do a kelp supplement to help. Kelp has good quality iodine and some phyto or plankton minerals in it, right? Lithium, healthy digestive support. So just basically you can do it in a budget friendly way and just still support it. It's just the big thing is for me, and I didn't mention this before, but the big thing really is being vigilant with the binders. The binders is what helps literally bind to the heavy metals and helps push them out. And I personally think it's a little dangerous to do a heavy metal protocol without doing a binder. And this is something like, I usually use Biocide, and I like their binders, but and it's a combination of different, like sometimes it's fulvic acid, sometimes it's humic acid, sometimes there's some activated charcoal in there, and taking activated charcoal by itself is not going to be enough. Like you need a more heavy duty binder to use. But the binder is important because that's going to help bind to things and get rid of it. And so you want to be able to, even if you're doing it like the budget friendly way, just doing it kind of with soaks and potassium support and sodium support and all that, like that's fine. But you still have to do kind of that pre-work, right? The helping with the lymphatic drainage and your liver and your hydration and your, supporting those basic minerals first and making sure you're having regular bowel movements and all of that. All of that is important. So I hope this helps explain some things about heavy metals and it gives you some insight. Now, you might be wondering, like, well, can I, even after I've explained all this, you might be wondering, like, well, can I tell if I'm, high in heavy metals just by symptoms? And not really. Like, you really do need a test because more than likely, and this is what I see happen in my world with my clients, more than likely, you have a bunch of different symptoms or whatever, you're dealing with different symptoms. And you have heavy metals like that are building up in your body. You have some heavy metal toxicity, but you also have other things, right? You have the imbalanced hormones. Your adrenals are totally shot. You've got, parasites or pathogens. Like there's other things going on because it's all related. And, it's kind of a chicken or egg situation. Like, did my heavy metal toxicity cause me to be more susceptible to, parasites? Who knows? And really, it doesn't matter. Like either way, we've got to address it. So it really doesn't matter what happened first. But the fact is that most of the time, honestly, I can say with my clients, it's every single time, 100% of the time when I have clients with heavy metal toxicity, there's so many other things going on in the body. So we're not just looking at the heavy metals that we're getting rid of. So my point is, there's not like certain symptoms where I'm like, oh yes, this is it. You for sure have heavy metal toxicity. It's multiple things going on and you want to address all of it. So hopefully that doesn't leave you with more questions than answers, but I really wanted to give it a good explanation of heavy metals and talking about just kind of overall toxicity and what a heavy metal protocol looks like for yourself. If you want more info on this, you have questions, you can email me and let me know. You can shoot me a message on Instagram. We can talk more about it, about what the labs look like so you can see if you do, in fact, have heavy metal toxicity in your body. Either way, I hope this gets shed some insight on it for you, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Hopeful and Wholesome, y'all. If you found value in this week's episode, please subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast and leave a review to let me know what you thought. I'd love to know what you find useful in these episodes so I can know how to provide the most value I can to my listeners. And if you have topics you'd like to know more about, I'd love to hear those as well. So shoot me a message on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. It's @TheHopePedraza, or you can visit my website, hopefulandwholesome.com. Thanks, y'all.